Greetings everyone, salutations. Today we are going to be taking a look at the kingdoms and states of Africa. We're going to be paying special attention to Africa in the post-classic age, what some of the major nation states are going to be, as well as what their characteristics are. So let's get started. One of the early things we notice about Africa is it's a stateless society. It is difficult to generalize this, especially across an entire continent. But the idea of a stateless society is that there are groups that operate like nation states, but they don't have a concentration of actual political power. We see these instrumented all throughout Africa, infamously with tribalisms and clanalisms. But this is a pretty common trend we see throughout a lot of West Africa in the post-classic. East Africa is going to be much more affected by the role Islam is going to play, as well as the development of the Swahili states. When Islam first arrives in Africa, it gets there because of the Berbers. These were our caravan middlemen. They are traders. And a couple of our big groups we're going to see are going to be the Almorads and the Almohads. These are the groups that go into sub-Saharan Africa itself and are going to spread Islam with them. The Berbers get it to Islam, but the two A names are going to get us through sub-Saharan Africa. Now, the Sudanic region is the area that we sometimes call the West Coast, the Gold Coast, the Slave Coast. There's three of them: Ghana, Mali, and Songhai. Now, all three of these sit at the southern end of the gold salt trade, and just like the silk roads of Eurasia, the gold salt trades sell, gold and salt from Central and Western Africa to North Africa and the Mediterranean region. And what those guys have right there in that picture, that's salt. That's salt tablets. Salt is very, very important because it can preserve animals, it can preserve flesh. If you're needing, to eat something, it can keep it from rotting. Now, gold, well, we like gold. We all like gold. It's a precious metal. It's shiny, and it works great at conducting electricity. The difference between the two is we need salt, while gold just makes us happy. First place we're going to talk about is Ghana. Muslim traders originally get here during the post-classic age, and it's our first major Sudanic state. It's our first major trading center in this region. Interestingly enough, the kings did not seem to develop a written code of laws, but just a common cultural trend for acceptable versus unacceptable significance. Now, Ghana rises, and as all empires do, falls. Mali does not necessarily immediately replace Ghana. Mali was just this loose collection of city-states that's finally brought together around a guy named Sundiata, who comes to power in 1240. Now, Sundiata was very interesting because, one, he unites all of Mali. He earns the nickname the Lion King of Mali, but he is crippled. He can't walk. So every time he goes out, he is always on a horse because he doesn't want people to know, what he, that he can't get around very well. Because in this time, in this place, crippled individuals were not given anything. Interestingly enough, in Mali we start to see the presence of griots. These are historians who pass things along in an oral manner. They tell the story of the tribe, of the clans, of the families. This is another instance where stuff is not written down. And it might seem that this is rudimentary and poor, but it worked. It worked fantastically well, and you can remember the stories of Homer, the Odyssey, the Iliad, and these were oral stories for centuries before somebody put them to paper. Now, Sundiata was significant, but the other significant person I want to talk about is Mansa Musa. He was a person who lived during the 13th century. He was a king of Mali who goes on the Hajj, which is one of the 5 pillars of faith. Now, this tells us that he was devout, but more interestingly enough, he brought with him 40 camels of gold. He spent gold everywhere he went. He created the illusion that Western Equatorial Africa was fantastically rich, and this is going to help spur the desire for Europeans to go to Africa and see what's on. The last one we're going to talk about is SONGHAI. It's written with an I or a Y, both are technically acceptable. It was established by Sunni Ali, and one of the interesting things that we see about SONGHAI is that it was the home to the fabled city of Timbuktu, a city that was infamous for trade, growth, scholarly development, and judicial law. Timbuktu was a very important place, and things for Songhai went very good for a very long time. I mean, we're talking 3 centuries without anybody even remotely able to stand up to them. However, things eventually start to fall apart, and most infamously start to fall apart in 1591 when Morocco decides to attack Songhai. Now, the Moroccans had always been interested in taking a bigger control of the gold salt trade. That's not the surprise. The surprise is that the Moroccans came with guns, and the Songhaians did not have firearms. This was a very, very one-sided conflict to which Songhai was defeated mostly. Just a reminder about Timbuktu and one of the other big cities, Jenne, major important cities, major centers for religion, trade, cultural growth, all that. Now, the west coast of Africa is more influenced by trade than the east. I mean, the west coast does see the gold salt trade, but the east side of Africa sees trade with India. And because of this, we're seeing a much bigger influx of different cultures, different persons, different peoples, different everything. And this is going to lead to a very cosmopolitan approach, a very cosmopolitan lifestyle for Eastern Africa. Last thing I just want to touch real quick on a couple smaller Central African states. We've got Yoruba, who was a non-Bantu speaking group, which is kind of uncommon. They developed these regional city-states. Benin was also infamous for city-states as well. They created these all throughout the forest regions of Central Africa. And the last one is Greater Zimbabwe. They built these giant stone houses and long houses. The picture here depicts a great Zimbabwean stone house. It's really impressive that this was put together in the time it was, in the manner it was, without the extra resources that we would kind of expect. So that's it for us today. Really short, just wanted to brush up on Africa because it is so very, very important to trade and culture and impact. So let me know if you need anything. I'll see you next time.